Hello, everyone. We have all of us here with me, all of us here with me, all of our higher selves here with me. I'm Angie. We have Natalie and Julie. Welcome to Conscious Conversations in Parenting, and we're on episode 30. And today we're going to be talking about this mentality of getting away with it. Do you feel that you're letting your child get away with something when you choose to be soft with them, or you choose to, I don't know. What's coming into my head is like, pick and choose your arguments, Angie. Pick and choose your arguments. But then sometimes when I choose to let whatever conflict is happening, I feel like I'm letting them get away with it. And there's going to be a consequence to that later. So we'll dive into that conversation. But thank you for being here. I'm Angie. I'm just a human who has transcended trauma in her life. And of course, if I am able to transcend trauma, I want to share that with people because there's so much trauma in our world. And so I'm just dedicated and devoted to sharing and having these open conversations where we can learn from each other's experiences and learn that we're not so alone in this world, especially as moms. I think it can be very isolating. It can be very easy to go down this path of only I have this struggle, you know? And so I think it's really important for moms to talk to other moms as we awaken and as we learn and as we evolve and as we try to break patterns in parenting with our own children. And I feel every mom I talk to is trying to do that in some way, shape, or form, right? And so that's why I'm really passionate about having these conscious conversations with such beautiful souls like all of you and these two women right here. So I'll let Julie take it away and introduce herself.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Julie. Online, I can also be known as Soul Turtle. And I am a human being, a soul living in this human body who has always wanted to be a mother from the longest time that I can remember. That was my driving force in life, to be a mother, to be with my children. Once I became a mother, the driving force was to be the best mother that I could be. And to do that, I had to become very aware and very conscious of my actions, and how I was the example for my children, which in turn led to me learning how to love myself and process my emotions in a healthy, no harm way, as well as release and remove as many toxins in my home and in my life as possible. I think that was one of the first things that I started to do with my body when I became pregnant, and then when I had my first child. So I absolutely love having these conscious conversations with these amazing ladies, because I have been conscious of parenting from, like, I think 4 years old was, I think, the first time that I remember wanting to be a mother. I used to have dreams of bringing babies home. It's always been a driving force in my life. So I'm so grateful that Angie has created this space and invited me. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie.
Um, my name's Natalie, and I'm going to borrow a little bit of Julie's intro because I freaking loved it. How, I'm a soul living in a human body too. And I mean, we all are, right? And whether we recognize that or not is fine. Um, and in the past few years, I've really come to be aware that there's always going to be challenges in life, and that's how we grow and evolve and discover more about ourselves. And sometimes certain roles that we have, like moms, seems to add to the challenges in our lives. Um, so I just love supporting everyone through those challenges and sharing and talking about how those challenges, how I'm living through those challenges, and kind of the tools and techniques that I use to just help me through, getting to the other side. And very often, funnily enough, it reflects what Angie and Julie are going through
Oh,
as well. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah. It always, man, you hit the nail on the head. Always. It's always relevant. And even if, like, let's say we had to put off a certain topic for a while, when it finally does happen, it's so relevant. You just can't make that
Oh,
shit up.
right. Always divinely timed, isn't it?
Always. And we learn this by having conversations. We learn this, right? So, yeah, so let's jump into this topic, this getting away with it energy. And if I recall, I don't remember which episode. I didn't look at that before we hopped on here, guys. But an episode, about a month back, Natalie and I had this conversation, and this came up, this mentality of, if I give in to my child, I might be letting them get away with it. And this is something that's been handed down to us. This is something we will often hear input from maybe grandparents, older relatives, older people just saying, don't let them get away with it. And I had an incident with my in-laws where we were in a hotel, and my daughter, we just drove a long, long way from Ontario to Nova Scotia. And now we're still not in our house. We're in a hotel, and she was tired and hungry, and it was late. And they went out to get food. We got set up in the hotel in this dark room near the restaurant, okay? So that we could eat our dinner, because we didn't want to eat them in our room, eat it all in our room. So they set us all up in this area, and she was having a meltdown. She was having a meltdown about something silly, and I decided I won't engage. I won't engage because I know engaging it will just make it worse. So I didn't engage, and Kyle was also not engaging, but he was trying to help her. And then it became clear that she wasn't going to accept help, so he stopped and he went and sat down. Well, his mother said at the table, "Oh, don't you dare let her get away with that." And I did not react well. It did not go well. I literally grabbed whatever I could at the table, and I said, I'm pretty sure I swore. And then I said, "Could you just not?" And I just grabbed all my stuff and walked away. And I'm like, "She's not getting away with anything." And you stormed off. And it was a particularly tough trigger for me. And so that's what led to this conversation. And I think it's great to unpack this. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about that mentality and where it might come from. This idea of our children are getting away with it. Don't you dare stop. But don't let her get away with it. Get away with what?
Yeah, like what's it, right? Like,
Like, what
and
exactly?
it's like, just even saying it, it's just like sticky, icky vibes. I don't know about you, right? But it feels like heavy, just that sentence, like you're letting them get away with it. Or maybe you're talking to yourself, right? That internal dialogue of, oh, I'm letting them get away with it. Like, what the hell is it,
What
right?
is it?
And I love how you had mentioned that you and Kyle chose not to engage with, you know, with your child who is venting, who's just having a hard day. Like, who else? Like, everybody has difficult moments in their day, right? And I love how you said that part of not engaging, like, we don't have to engage. Like, we don't have to answer everybody's questions. We don't have to get into their lane. We don't have to engage if they are bitching and complaining and just, I don't know, like throwing Legos all over the place, or who knows, like, just let them, man. There's no, like, because of the, otherwise you're fighting a losing battle, right? You're getting sucked
Exactly.
into their energy. You are stepping way out of your lane. And like, what are we teaching our kids then? Right? Like, by not engaging, you're teaching your kids it's okay to give other people space. And you were able to do that because you give yourself inner space, right? But if we're in their face, like, be quiet, or this isn't how we behave, or whatever, right? What are we teaching our kids, right? To, like, get up, get up in people's faces, right? And have that um conflict, right?
The
Like, and constantly
unproductive
engage in
conflict.
conflict. We don't need to engage in conflict, man, because that person's, conflict vibes, for lack of a better word, that's enough conflict in the room. Like, why would you get sucked into it, right? And sometimes it's hard to not engage. Sometimes it's hard to not get sucked in, because might be a habit, like we're just used to, that's just how we roll, that's how we were raised. And also if we're very sensitive to emotions, to energies, if we're if we have empathic tendencies, and a lot of people do, well, I mean, really, we're all empaths, but a lot of people are very sensitive empaths, and they don't even realize it. So they think that, oh my God, like this kid who's like freaking out, or just super tired, they're bothering me. But it's not actually that. It's just that you're so freaking empathic that you're like inadvertently like feeding into their emotions, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's just I don't know. That's my long-winded sentence. There's probably like 10
Absolutely,
things
though.
in there.
Have to say, I love the question, what is it?
Yeah,
And
what is it?
what is it? So for me, what's coming to me, it is emotion. It is challenge, right? Letting them get away with what? Having an emotion or a challenge. We all have emotions and challenges, right? So when it comes to not engaging, I love that you chose not to engage. I love that you brought that up as well, because that is a choice. And the way Natalie explained, not getting sucked into it, it is such an empowering choice to choose not to get sucked into that energy and that whirlwind. It can become a whirlwind, and we are here to be the example. We're here to show them calm within the storm, to show them that there's another way, right? And it has been a huge learning curve in my family to not engage in one another's meltdowns, for lack of better terms, challenging emotions and experiences. It's because it never turns out to be, well, I can't say never. I mean, we can engage in a calm, healthy way at one point, but we need to be the calm first. We can't go in all riled up, right? Yeah. So it's been a big learning curve how to not engage and get riled up, because it just, what's the word I'm looking for? It just amplifies. Yeah, it just, and amplifies the situation, amplifies the challenge. And then we both become challenged. Learning how to disengage, choosing not to engage when someone else is having because those emotions, and it can be so challenging. We want to tell them to stop. We want to be like, that's not okay. We don't accept this behavior. This is not okay in our house, or whatever, right? But that's just us getting worked up and sucked in. We need to be the calm, and often we need to disengage. We need to step away first so we can find the calm and center ourselves before we engage. It's not letting anyone get away with anything. I think the big key, though, is to, once we've calmed down, that is when we come back and we re-engage, and we can discuss and what other options we have in those situations. Because it is certainly okay to have these tough emotions. It is certainly okay to have meltdowns, and just feel all these feelings. Although it is not okay to cause harm to ourselves in those situations. It's not okay to cause harm to others or our environment. And that's where I always kind of go with this, because all of these emotions are meant to come up in us. We're meant to be triggered, so to speak. We're meant to have these challenges. And that's so we can learn more about ourselves, what aligns with our soul, what aligns with who we want to be on this earth. And if we are harming ourselves, others, or our environment, we are not in alignment with love and with our soul and with source energy. So these experiences are wonderful learning experiences. And I think it's beautiful that you chose not to engage and allow her to have these emotions and experiences, as long as she's not harming herself, someone else, or the environment. So be it. Have these emotions. It's okay. And sometimes we can get to a point where we can sit with them and be the calm while they're having these emotions. I know you've done it many times, where they've been having tough, challenging emotions, and you've been able to sit there and be the calm and be the love. But sometimes we need to disengage, and that's not getting away with anything. That is setting a beautiful example, that we don't, like Natalie said, we don't have to engage in these energies and emotions. Because when we're in alignment with ourselves, we hold our own energy, and those other energies outside of us are unable to penetrate our energy field. You know
They
what I
have
mean? We
to,
can still be
yeah,
the
they have to
calm.
adapt. They have to adapt to now the love, the calm that you're bringing in. Like they
Right.
have to what's the word I'm looking for? Like reorient, reorganize. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right. And by seeing that example, by seeing there is another way to this. And I mean, that's such a beautiful lesson in life for so many reasons. Like I see it in my children now when at school. You know, Stephen had a situation where someone wanted to beat him up, and I could not be more proud of the way he handled the situation. It it floored me that he was so confident and brave. And he told me he felt not confident inside, but he acted confident. He said, I looked him in the eye. I put my shoulders back so I looked confident. I told him I didn't want to engage in this. Like he didn't use the words engage, but he didn't want to have a fight with him. And he said, and I even turned around and put my back to him and walked away so he knew I wasn't scared. Like all of these, he did not allow that energy to penetrate his field. Even though he was feeling it on the inside, he was able to maintain his calm. And he said, you know, I made sure I looked calm, and I was just so proud of him. And I mean, these are examples that he's been able to experience at home. And there was a time when it was not like that. I originally started going to counseling because I would totally get engaged in these energies, and I would create these energies and unhealthy ways of dealing with these emotions by throwing things, or you know, kicking something, or screaming, or swearing, or you know, anger and rage has been one of my biggest lessons in this life. So it's definitely, I've not always been in a place of this knowledge and understanding, but I'm so grateful that you've brought it up. It's brought so much back to me to reflect on.
I'm gonna throw a curiosity out, and I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think about this, because one of the things, like, you know, there was some conversation with the in-laws after, because I stormed off and I left for the night. Like I was done. I didn't want, I was really angry at them. I was triggered because I was that kid that everyone thought I was getting away with something. And I didn't understand that. I was that kid, and I was like, I'm not getting away. Like, what am I trying to get away with? Like, I didn't even know what I was trying to get away with, you know? What are they talking about? So am I fundamentally wrong? But here's one thing, like, because I follow what Julie's talking about too. In fact, I was just having the conversation in the library with Leah today, because she was ruining, because she was mad. She was ruining the thing that she created today in, you know, at their event, right? And I was talking to her about that again, you know, not causing harm to self, others. But here's a curiosity, because in my mother-in-law's eyes, she is creating harm because she's disrupting all these people having dinner over here in this other side. And I'm like, but is that creating harm? Is it though, you know, or is it just her discomfort? You know, we're always people pleasing. She's a people pleaser, and she doesn't want to look bad, right? And so, but it's interesting because I think from her, and this has come across, I've come across this many times, that whole creating harm, it's like this, oh, how do I want to say this? It's even like these agendas of like, oh, it might not have been your intention to offend somebody, but you did offend them. And so did you create harm? You know what I mean? There's this whole like agenda in the world, that you know, wants to project onto us that we are creating harm by speaking our truth because it offends
Right.
somebody.
Oh, I love that question. That is so huge. It's very interesting because when it comes to causing harm, you know, that it's there's not like, you know, this is the line. This is where you're suddenly causing harm, and this is where you're not causing harm. And I think that's why it's such a topic, you've caused me harm because you said
Because
something
it
that hurt
isn't
me.
black and white.
Right. It's not just, black and white. This is harm. This is not harm. When I think of harm, I think of like physical harm, right? Like you're not physically hurting someone or something, but there is also mental and emotional harm as well. And in the situation you're talking about, I think, do those people have the option to walk away if they choose, if it's making them uncomfortable? Yes. Is it really harming them? No. Could it be triggering them? Yes. Right? So, but is a trigger harm? I do not believe a trigger is harm at all.
But people
I've
will like
had,
to project that onto you, that you're triggering them,
right.
and so
So
it's your
that
fault.
we've had this conversation many times about the word trigger. Like I don't really like the word trigger. I use it at times because people understand it.
Mm.
I don't think of it as a trigger. I think of it as a challenge. So if something comes up and starts challenging me, people will call it a trigger. But I see challenges are here just to teach us. And I see that we have personal power and we have choice. When it comes to this whole conversation of changing our language for other people because it triggers them or it upsets them, I personally don't think that is necessary. I think if someone feels uncomfortable with the way we are behaving, or if I feel uncomfortable, let's put it on me. If I feel uncomfortable with the way someone's behaving or the words that they are using, it is then my responsibility to either speak to that person and let them know, when I feel, so when you use this word or when you take this action, I feel uncomfortable or it upsets me. That's fine. Or I have a choice to disengage, walk away. I'm not liking this feeling. I'm not liking what's happening. So I'm going to walk away. I don't think someone triggering me is someone harming me. If someone's verbally abusing me, that's a different story. I think that's harm, right? We still also have personal power in that choice as well, though. So, I mean, it's not black and white, right? Like we
So
have,
I
even if,
wonder,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I'm just wondering, this whole getting away with what? Is that what it is that people think they're getting away with? That they're getting away with harming someone? When
Right.
it's really just people not wanting to take responsibility for their own discomforts.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law in particular is what I'm thinking of, whatever she was uncomfortable about, right? She didn't want to take that responsibility, and so she kept saying.
Right. And that brings me to judgment. So self-judgment and thinking that people are judging us,
Right,
right?
when they
Like you're
might not
saying,
be.
being the people pleaser, right? Oftentimes they're not judging us. They're not even thinking about us. They couldn't care less. Maybe when a child is having, an emotional breakdown and they're being really loud, sure, we may think, but actually, I just had this experience today. It happened in a store. We went to the mall and we went to a store, and a child was having, an emotional challenge. They were yelling and they were saying, the child was maybe 3 or 4, and they wanted their dad and they're yelling for their dad, and their mom was there and trying to manage the child the best she could. I don't know, the child was squirming, and eventually she disengaged and she walked away, and it gave the child the opportunity to calm down, and the child completely calmed down and was just laying on the floor and whatever. I mean, did that harm me? No. Did it harm anyone else there? No. um, I did actually, as I walked by, I just said to the child, "Oh, I hope you feel better soon." And he got a little like, "Ah," again. I was like, "Oop." I didn't say anything. That I know. I just said, "I hope you feel better soon. I see you're having a hard time." And then, he started going up again. So I just, kept walking. And then he completely calmed down again. But it's not harming anybody. If it's challenging someone or triggering someone, again, we have the personal power and the personal choice to disengage, walk away. I mean, if someone feels the need to say something, are they judging themselves in that moment? Because they're judging the other person, like projecting that judgment onto somebody else. So
That's what I feel all of this is. It's a projection,
right,
this
right,
idea of getting away with it. It's language my husband uses, and obviously it's language his mom uses.
right.
And so I have noticed it, especially since that incident. I have noticed it here where Kyle says it when one of the children like speak disrespectfully in his opinion. I don't think it's disrespectful, but in his opinion, it's disrespectful. And he'll be like, no, I can't let her get away with that. And he'll get up and finally get up and respond. It's like he's passive, passive, passive in the conflict that he's hearing until he thinks she's disrespectful. And then he's like, I can't let her get away with it. And I get so triggered. What is she getting away with? She's not getting away with anything. With what?
Right.
Being human? Being a kid?
It's
And so I'm
interesting 'cause
curious, like, do you guys have that in your home, that languaging at all?
it's funny. I've never had this languaging. I've never thought of the getting away with it until you brought it up. It because I feel like I've been so calculated as a parent. And it's true. And Steve's like, you know, he's like, he used to always be like, really, like, do you need to discuss this? Does this need to be a big deal? Or, and I'm always thinking about like the future, and I'm thinking about like this action and behavior now, how continuing this will affect my children in the future, right? So in these situations where they are being challenged or behaving in a way that I don't think will benefit them in the future, I do always come back and discuss it with them and discuss their other options that they have. I mean, they're their own human beings and they're going to make their own choices. But I've never really thought like, oh, they're getting away with it.
I wonder though if that's the same energy, because that's a similar energy, because that is the energy. This getting away with it is because you're thinking about where the future, what the consequences in the future.
Right.
If I don't address this now, if I don't control this now, what will? So I almost feel like that might be like, you don't use that
Right.
languaging maybe, but I feel like it might be the same energy though, because the
Right.
energy is trying to control it now so that
Right.
they don't
I mean,
get away with it, so that there's no future outcome that I think is going to happen.
right. Yeah, I absolutely get what you're saying, and that makes sense. And I haven't there hasn't been that languaging. So I haven't completely wrapped my brain around that, in this present moment. But yeah, it does sound very, similar, right? Like but I've never felt it like they're getting away with it. Like it's more of, there are other options for you that you can choose going forward, and explaining to them and explaining to Steve, this is why I think looking at other options is important, because of past experience, because of all of my research and work with children over the years. What I've seen children grow up. I've seen, I've had my own experience of growing up, so I make those connections. And I don't ever feel like it's a need to control their behavior. I feel it's more a need to show them that there are other options and other ways, because of, and I will explain to them the experiences that I've had or I've seen, or, whatever I've learned through my life experience. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I mean, it does seem kind of similar though. Like I'm not negating like, no,
Oh
that's
no,
absolutely
I know
not.
that. I know that.
Yeah.
We know, we've
But
had this
it's
conversation so many times, like control shows up in all these different ways, right?
oh yes.
And I feel like the getting away with it is a little bit of a control energy as
Right.
well. And so that's why,
Like wanting to control, yeah, wanting to control the situation. Like this is not okay.
just so that it doesn't have this outcome, that because we're always so worried about the future, right? Not us, but
Right.
humans
Yeah.
in general.
We're always thinking about, yeah, how our actions now will affect. Well, we know we're creators, right? We know we
Yeah.
are the creators of our lives, and our actions now, create not only our present moment, but our future. If we continue to choose the same things, we are, as we all know, we are constantly choosing in each present moment. So we have the option to choose something different. Yeah, so interesting. So much in this conversation. I absolutely love it.
We knew that when we said this could be a topic on its own.
Oh yeah.
What do you think, Natalie?
I think, I mean, I've experienced that whole vibe of getting away with it. Especially since I've really changed the way I parent and the way I interact with, well, my whole household, right? Because I always, now if there's a challenge or a conflict, instead of um, projecting out, I always go in and I'm like, ooh, like this feels super uncomfortable, or like I'm, I'm feeling like the anger building up or like the uncomfortableness. I'm like, okay, like I dive in, right? And I think that's the key, that a lot of people, like, we underestimate the way we respond to like such a huge degree. Because if let's say, my husband's like, oh, you're letting them get away with it again, or you always let them get away with this, or whatever. Inside, it feels like, oh, right? I'm like, oh, like, am I? And like him saying that is actually a reflection of like whatever self-judgment I have about myself, right? Because maybe I doubt myself. Because sometimes I doubt myself. I'm like, should I be interacting with them in a more aggressive way, right? Because that's essentially what when someone's like, you're letting them get away with it, what they're really saying is you should be more aggressive, like, because grr arg, we live in this hostile world, instead of just like sitting back and letting the child vent out however they need to, right? Instead of, I try and give people as much space as I can, right? So when I'm kind of in that situation, I go in and I'm like, oh, like, why, those words that my husband said, like, why does it make me feel like really shitty, right? And it's like, well, because there's this self-judgment, even if it's like a tiny little seed. It's like, oh, like, this is the challenge that I need to work through, right? Like, how am I responding to whatever he's saying, right? And it's not about being thick-skinned. It's not about that at all. It's like, really, like, how are you responding to your environment, right? And I think even if nobody really sees what you're doing, because a lot of times when we go in, in our meditation in that moment, or just introspection, it gets really quiet, right? And everybody is used to parenting being so fucking loud. So when you go in,
You don't know what to
people
do.
just automatically assume that you're not doing anything. And it's like, dude, what I'm doing right now is way more powerful than any timeouts or any like groundings that could ever, you know? And but it's about believing that in yourself, right? Of, okay, how am I choosing to respond in this moment, even if there's no external response, right? And that, continually doing that, like continuously reminding ourselves of this whenever something challenging comes up, right? Like when, other parents or other people may be judging the way you choose to parent. Go in, man, like go in every single time. And then it actually does change the outcome in some other now moment. But there's no like instant gratification, right? Like that whole mentality of like, oh, you're screaming at the dinner table because you're tired. Well, I'm gonna, take away whatever you're gonna take away, right? Like their toys or their devices or whatever. that like instant gratification of, I need to punish you right now, right? That external kind of reaction, instead of being like, oh, like this feels super uncomfortable that my mother-in-law is judging me. Like, but is there, you feel uncomfortable because there must be a seed of self-doubt inside of you, right? And maybe that self-doubt is there just because your physical body is tired as F because you drove like 1,000 kilometers that day, right?
Yeah, we're all feeling it. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I
Natalie.
think when we're doing this, it has such a powerful impact in it, because I've experienced this over and over again. And like at the point where Julie is, like, you look back and you're like, whoa, like such amazing growth in our family because we chose to just respond differently in those moments. And it really does roll out to your external world, but it's not that instant gratification that, our mind craves, right?
So
Yeah.
something that you said, Natalie, about acting more aggressively in the moment totally got my mind going. Like, that is wanting to control. It's wanting to control that child. It's wanting to control that situation. And as we know, we cannot control anyone but ourselves. So consciously choosing not to engage, to go within, is
Or to do what you were talking about, Julie, in coming in and showing them that they're explaining that there's another way.
exactly. And
Those are
I
the two
mean,
different energies. There's the
right.
aggression, that's control.
Right, trying to, and like you said, like, I'm taking away your devices because of the way you're behaving, or whatever it may be.
Which I
I
was doing
think,
in the library today.
right.
Full
And I do it
transparency.
often. I do it often too, believe me. I'm like, no, this behavior is not acceptable. You're losing it. That's it. And I mean, I do that not only to control the situation. I do it to allow space so we all can become introspective, so that we're not constantly being fed information and distraction from everywhere. And I let them know that. I'm like, whoa, it seems like we're having a hard time managing our emotions and what's going on. We need some time to separate from the devices so that we can figure this out. And a lot of the time it has to do with our communication with one another, right? We're suddenly getting snippy. We're suddenly getting, and when I say we, it's often the boys with each other that I notice it in, right? Like, they're suddenly being disrespectful, the way they speak to one another, just not being kind. And I'm like, whoa, we need some time to disengage. So, but what, to go back a second, choosing not to engage when someone is really riled up, allowing them to have these feelings and go through these emotions. As we know, it is so valuable to take the time to feel these emotions. We're meant to understand ourselves more by feeling them rather than suppressing them, right? So if there's no harm being caused, like for me, like, generally it's like physical harm, right, is what I really think of. Like,
Yeah.
they're not physically harming themselves, they're not physically harming one another,
Yeah.
they're not physically harming their environment. Go for it, feel your emotions, allow it to happen. But I'm not going to engage with you at that time. Nothing good is going to come of that. You're not ready to listen to other options. Being a wonderful friend with someone else, like, I think of that, and allowing them to just feel and vent and go through it without trying to correct what's going on, tell them that there's other ways. There's a time and a place, so we can do both. We can disengage, we can allow them to feel and experience without harm, and then eventually, when we've calmed down, then we come back and we can have a discussion. Like, there's other options as well. So something that's coming to
Yeah.
me again is actually another situation that happened in the same store in the same mall today with Steven, my 13-year-old. And he was saying, we were looking at pants, amazing deal at like West 49. Like, pants were $10, shirts were $10, $15. We're like, oh my goodness, we can't pass up this opportunity, right? So there's all kind of pants, and we start looking at them, and he's starting to get agitated and irritated, and he's telling me, like, I'm feeling anxious and I'm feeling overwhelmed. And he's doing a beautiful job of expressing how he's feeling. He's saying, out shopping, I often feel this way. He's saying there's a lot of energy around me and I can feel it and everyone's not happy. And, and it wasn't our family that was not happy. He's just feeling everybody's energy in the store. And it wasn't super crowded or busy or anything. There was nobody really around us. They were like far away, but he could feel it. And he was expressing it so beautifully. Like, I was so proud of him. And he started getting snippy though with me and Steve, like the way he's talking to us, like it sounded very rude and whatever. So we were talking to him and we were saying, first of all, I just reminded him, I'm like, okay, that's, great that you're acknowledging how you're feeling in the moment. I said, but just take a moment and look at your present moment and see where you are. Notice that the people are far away, like you're not really crowded. There is a lot of space. And he's like, okay. And he's still irritated and agitated. And we wanted him to try on some pants and he didn't want to. At first he's like, yeah, I'll try on the pants. And then all this energy came up and he was like, I don't want to, and whatever. So like, we really would like you to try on these pants, and he's irritated. And eventually we were just like, why don't you go take some space? Like, just walk away and take your space, get away from all the energy, take some deep breaths and calm down. And he was able to do that, to take some space and come back, and he tried the pants on. And I was just so proud and happy that he was able to express how he felt. Even though he sounded a little bit rude with us and whatever, we were able to, in the moment, acknowledge that and say, we don't like the way that you're speaking to us. Like, it doesn't feel very nice. We understand you're getting upset, so maybe you need some space. It ended up working very beautifully. So at that time, even though he was getting agitated, we were still able to engage with him in that moment. He was able to verbalize how he was feeling. We were able to offer him other options that he was then willing to take. Excuse me, that's my timer. But it was a beautiful, beautiful situation and experience to have.
That's an amazing, yeah. I feel like that could be a topic in itself. I kind of wrote that down. Because
Yeah.
that's exactly where Kyle would come in and be like, I'm not going to let her get away with that because she was rude. But I love the way you handled that, Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's all tiny increments at a time, though. Like, I'm sure Julie didn't get to this spot, within a month or even within a year. It's all these tiny little, like, micro changes, but within yourself, right? And that's what I really want people to understand. It's all these little, like, keep going in, even if you don't believe it. Like, this shit actually works. Like, this is how we actually, change our external environment, is just by going in, like, teeny tiny little things. And then one day you're going to wake up and then you're going to look around, and like, even my husband has noticed, and actually all my kids have noticed that, like, yeah, sometimes we still get snippy with each other, and sometimes the voices get a little loud, but it happens like not often at all. Like, this would be something like every night, it would be like a shit show every night. And now it's like so very rare that, and when it does come up, it dissipates so quickly.
Yeah. And that's why my husband and I are able to make that choice to not engage, because we have experienced the benefit of it. And it's so much better than the alternative, the shit show every night. It's so much better.
Yeah.
And you're right, Natalie, it has been years and years of practice and choosing and practice and choosing and practice and choosing. And as you said, it starts with us going within and choosing for ourselves. It doesn't start with controlling and changing our children. It starts with recognizing it within ourselves. And you made me think, we really started this process when we went to couples counseling, learning how to say to each other, I feel, without judging, without name calling, without disrespect, and then we modeled that for our children because that's what we chose to practice. But it was going within and choosing a new way, choosing something different, and then practicing over and over. And again, that example is what our children learn, right? Because we can try to control them and tell them what to do as much as we want, but we are never going to control them. They are never going to just do what we say. Our best option to teach them is to be their example.
To do it. Yeah, they'll do what we do,
right?
Not what we say. And that's what, we come back to, getting away with it, this mentality. I think it's really, my invitation is for one to really recognize what are they getting away with? Like recognize that it's like like fruitless effort, right? We're meant to go within. And the more and more that we do that, the more and more that mentality drops away, because you start to realize they're not getting away with anything. And like you said, we're the model for them. And so what are we modeling to them? What did you say, Natalie? You said something at the very beginning about like there's conflict. Why are we going to add more conflict into it when there's already
Yeah.
conflict? So what are we modeling to them? We're going to model that we're going to add to the conflict and we're going to get in it and put our energy into it and amplify it, right? Or are we going to model being the calm in the storm, being the calm in the chaos? What's going to serve them better, right? There's nothing they're getting away with. They're not getting away with anything when you teach them that in that moment, I think. And the small increments, that's big. Just start doing it. Start going in, see what happens. It feels awkward. Feels awkward when everybody expects you to yell and nag and get involved,
Yeah.
control, try to nag. It feels awkward when you first go within and everyone's like,
Yeah. Yeah, because you're changing the script and everybody's still holding their old script, and it's like, what the fuck, Angie, you're not sticking to your line.
roll. Where's your lines?
And it's like, well, you're holding a whole different script, right?
Right. Why are you not yelling at this child and telling them that this is not okay and they cannot behave this way? And yeah, exactly.
I taught my in-laws something really powerful in that moment too.
Absolutely.
They witnessed us not engage. They witnessed their son engage and then not engage. They witnessed both of us do it. And even though they didn't understand it and they weren't comfortable with it, and I handled it poorly, I did come to them after and I did explain. I was that child that people said I was getting away with, things. And I was harmed because of it. I was harmed because of people's opinion that don't let her get away with that. And then I was harmed because I had unhealthy parents. They don't know what to do when somebody tells them, don't let your child get away with that. So they did what they thought they could do, and that harmed me. And so that was my trigger. That's why I was so triggered. But anyway, this was such a valuable conversation. I like so many big elements here. I think it's really, yeah, I so much to think about. And you brought up some really great examples too, Julie, that really resonate with my own experiences. And
well, what you just said, it's funny because I never, identified until this exact moment about don't let her get away with it as a child. So like my own experience, you've said that to me before, but I've never identified with it in my own experience until this moment when you said it. For some reason in my head, I got a flashback to my mother telling my father to spank me or to give me the belt. Right. So it was like, she was telling him, don't let her get away with it. My father never wanted like to punish us. It was never him. It always came from my mom. She was so fed up. She's like, you do something with them, kind of thing. So when you said that, like I got harmed because of that, I now realize I had the exact same experience. It was like I got the belt or I got smacked or whatever it was, right? Because my mom was saying, don't let her get away with that. That's
and you don't know what you're getting, like what?
Right. I'm like, what? I was having a meltdown. I was having emotions. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was feeling this way. I didn't know there was another way to express my feelings. And now suddenly I'm getting hit. And that's why I, through my life, was, always like, I'm never going to spank my children. And I did try it. I called CAS on myself. I did, I tried it. Yeah. Crazy. It didn't work. And I knew I never wanted to parent through fear because it didn't work on me. But I would like to say my invitation to everyone out there is to recognize in the moment when your child, our children, are having these challenges with their emotions, and recognize that if they are not physically harming themselves, another, or their environment, can you allow them to feel these feelings without engaging? Allow them. And then can you then go to them once it's calmed down and you feel calm inside? Very important to take time to calm yourself, because we can feel so like, when our children are having a hard time, right? We want to change it, we want to control it, we want to fix it. But can you disengage and then come back later and tell them that it's okay to feel these emotions. Tell them that we all have these emotions. Tell them that we're proud of them for not harming themselves or another environment or their environment, if that's something, they've done in the past. And then tell them that there's also another way. And what I would suggest is letting people know when I feel. So that statement is so big. It has changed our family so much, because oftentimes when someone or something is upsetting us, we want to point the finger and blame and name call, but instead allowing them to engage with their own feelings. Like it's them now going within, trying to figure out what made me feel this trigger, right? When this happened, I felt, whether it's a person or a thing or an experience, whatever it is. So that's my what's the word? Oh my gosh, I just lost it.
Invitation.
Thank you. Invitation for you. So allowing yourself to allow them to feel these emotions. If nothing is getting harmed, allow it to calm down, and then go to them and ask them, or ask them what happened. Like if they can think about what happened and how did you feel? How did that make you feel? I think that changed our family dynamic huge, and our ability to feel our tough emotions without harming anyone or anything. Not just physically, like, because it was mainly like the environment that would get harmed. Something would get kicked, or a door would be slammed or whatever, but also like the verbal name calling or insults or whatever, right? That type of harm as well, because
the put downs.
Exactly. The insults, the you this, you that, you this, so it's really turning it around to recognize when this situation happens, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Not blaming
instead
anyone.
Of the you. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a wonderful invitation.
Thank you.
Natalie, did you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I mean, next time when you're in a situation that it seems that, the other adults or whatever around are saying that, oh, you're letting your kid get away with it. It feels super uncomfortable. Guaranteed it'll probably feel super uncomfortable. Go in, use that cue, use feeling like uncomfortable as your cue to just go in and be like, okay, like, why does this feel so uncomfortable to me? And maybe you can't get the answer, but just asking that question will open that doorway.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome conversation, guys. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I've been really excited to get to this conversation. If you like this video, please you can subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll know when we're coming, when we're premiering live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And at least one of us is usually there to live chat with you when we premiere our videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here with us, and share your comments, share your own experiences with this, your own as a child growing up and as a parenting your children. All right.
And one last thing, if you want to find us, you can, our information is below. So click the links and you can find out more about us.
Yes.
Who we are and what we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. I love this conversation.
I loved it too. Thank you. Until next episode.